Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 123. I am your host, David J. Murphy. With me are my co-hosts, Ron Hamilton. Ron?
Aloha from Hawaii, where the lava is miles away.
Oh, that's good. So you're not burning alive. There's not like lava right below camera view.
I am currently safe from the lava, sir.
All right, that's good. That's good. Where is the lava in relation to you? Just so we know, and how close is it?
Completely different island, sir.
Okay, so
I'm on the island of Oahu, and the lava flow is on the Big Island, also known to you mainlanders as the island of Hawaii.
Nice. Well, good. Well, stay safe. Stay not dead out there. Stay not burning, right? Because if you were wet, if you were raining, I'd say stay dry. But it's lava, so don't melt. Also, my other co-host is Zach Roberts. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
I survived the NRA gun show, so
well, that's good.
Yep.
What's worse, lava or an NRA gun show?
Well, lava you can kind of run away from. A 9mm, not so much. Not so much. Yeah.
What is an NRA gun show? Was it a gun show you said, or a convention? Or
well, it's the National Rifle Association annual meeting. It happened in Dallas. It's their big show. They have a massive, ridiculous. It's basically think about San Diego Comic-Con, but for guns.
Nice.
that's basically the National Rifle Association annual meeting. NRAAM.
Do people cosplay as guns?
They cosplay as cowboys, and they cosplay as rednecks. I would assume they're cosplaying.
Nice.
I don't know. It could be their daily wear. But no, people get actually do genuinely they dress up in America, basically. And I'm not kidding. I have photos. I'll publish them too. American flags, everything. It's like the Kentucky Derby for guns. I can keep up these metaphors if you want to keep going. But, no, we
only have an hour and a half, so
board members, and they have political events and crap like that. But yeah, it's my 4th year, so
cool. And the president spoke at this one. Did you capture that?
Yes,
wow.
Yes, yep. And the vice president, it's the first year ever a president and vice president have spoken at a NRA meeting.
Wow.
And I think it's only the 3rd or 4th year that a president actually has spoken. I think Reagan did, but other than that. Yeah.
Were they as a team? Was it simultaneous, or was it 2 separate speeches?
You think Donald Trump shares a stage with anybody?
I'm sorry.
No, it was Mike Pence, and then it went cut back to Chris Cox, who's the president. I think he's president of, or no longer the president. I believe the president is now the Honorable Oliver North.
Wow.
Is now the president of the National Rifle Association.
Wow.
Somehow a former felon can be the head of a gun rights group, but whatever.
Can he own a gun?
Yes, he can.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe his sentence was commuted or something like that, was lifted by Reagan, like all good crooks do.
Indeed. Was there any animosity towards the press while you were there, or was it pretty much they left you alone?
I actually mentioned to a bunch of people that I do this podcast at the NRA convention.
Welcome, new viewers.
Yes, so there could be some NRA viewers, but not usually. I mean, sometimes there is. There was at a similar convention called the SHOT Show, which it's not really similar. It's more for really big guns, like the ones the military buys, and drones and things like that. In Las Vegas, a Guardian reporter a couple years ago basically just went up to every single rifle he found and was like, well, this is the one that they used in the Columbine shooting, and this is the one, and talked to the thing, and shockingly he got kicked out. And it was a big deal. And basically that year at the NRA convention, they required us to have minders. This year, weirdly, they didn't, or at least I didn't, because I just went out there. No, it wasn't too problematic. I mean, people are weirdly okay with you photographing their children, playing around with handguns, and clearly were never taught. As I always say, though, it's the children have the best gun trigger discipline, and know not to point at people. Adults, not at all. Fingers on the trigger, they're on the 50 cal that's on the tripod, and they're bang, 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 pointing at people. Kids, though, they won't. I've never seen a child under the age of 15 point a gun at the NRA convention at another person. Adults, totally all the time.
Nice, nice. All right, well, let's get on with the show. We got a lot of show to get to tonight. Let me introduce our guest this evening, coming back to us for probably his dozenth time, Aaron Cynic. Aaron, how you doing, buddy? Tell us about yourself.
I'm good. It's good to be back again. It's good to see all your smiling faces again. I'm glad that, everyone survived. I'm glad you're surviving lava and the NRA convention, so that's extremely good. For the folks who don't know, I'm a freelance journalist and photographer from Chicago. I am a former Gothamist alum, and now I'm pretty much stringing for whoever has money and is interested in things that I cover.
Good, good. Unfortunately, well, not good, really, because, obviously the reason we had you on last time was to talk about what the Chicagoists went down, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Sad. Has anything come in to fill that void yet?
Nothing regular outside of me just having more time to do freelance pieces for other outlets. So I've had a couple of stories alongside another indie freelancer here in Chicago for Shadowproof. I've been doing a couple of other things for some local outlets. I did C2E2, which is Chicago's Comic-Con, for an outlet called the Third Coast Review. I have another story alongside that same freelance journalist by the name of Elizabeth King coming out in Truth Out, hopefully sometime soon. We're editing, but we traveled to MSU to cover the anti-fascist protests of Richard Spencer last month, and then this month we traveled to Burns, Tennessee to cover the protests of another white nationalist conference called the American Renaissance. So I've been doing a little bit of that lately, as well as just general politics and activism here in Chicago for whoever's interested.
Okay. Cool. Welcome. Well, he's well on his path to being on the show for many, many times. I think this is his third or fourth time. Alex Tetriol, how you doing, buddy?
Not bad. I've done some yard work this weekend, and I think this
Nice.
It's super rad. Anyway,
Some freelance yard work?
freelance yard work, yes. My life now. Still working, freelancing as well. A lot for the National Observer, as per usual, but working on a few other projects right now, trying to get something going for coming up Mali deployment for Canadian forces. So I'm trying to get out there and gearing up for the G7 next month. So
Nice. Where in Canada are you? Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal? I can't remember.
neither of those. Ottawa, actually.
Ottawa, okay.
Ottawa.
So I think the more boring side of things.
That's the
Yes.
capital, right?
It is. That's where all the politics and shenanigans happen.
Nice. All right, great. Well, thank you for bringing our international flair to tonight's show. Always appreciate that. All right. Well, let's get on with the show. Like I said, we got a lot of show to talk about. This was, just so you all know, kind of like behind the scenes, right? So this was intended to be our Mother's Day special. I had intended and tried desperately to get a mother and a daughter or mother and a son combo on the show. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Ron tried valiantly. I tried. I reached out to a
five
couple
white
folks.
men.
Yes, 5 white men for our Mother's Day special. Well, we all have mothers, so therefore we all can talk about that. We will talk about Mother's Day a little bit. Maybe towards the end of the show we'll talk about what we're doing for Mother's Day. But again, that was the idea. Maybe we'll try that out. I'm still hopeful I can get a father-son or father-daughter team for Father's Day special, but we'll see. And I do have a few people who might come on, so we may just have to do our Mother's Day special at another time. But what I want to talk about instead, speaking of mothers walk us down the aisle, or our fathers, maybe not walk us down the aisle, but, our parents give us away when we get married, and weddings usually want a wedding photographer. And so wedding photography isn't usually a topic we talk about on a visual journalism podcast, but, I want to talk about because it's something that, I think many of us have dabbled in, if not done ourselves, to try to, earn money in between times of having visual journalism jobs or more photojournalism jobs, or we shoot weddings in a photojournalistic style. But there was an article here published on Petapixel where essentially, the author hypothesized essentially that wedding photography was going the way of sort of visual journalism, in that. And again, we are very pessimistic about the career field. We are hopeful it'll be, it can be something you can make a career out of. But essentially what he's saying is that the amount of money people are paying for a wedding photographer has drastically decreased as to what it was, a few years ago, or even less back in, in the film days. It's just people don't value photography as much as they did, just like they don't value photojournalism. Now they're starting not to value photography. They're the people who have been doing this job and, for a long time go from earning, a couple $1,000, $10,000 for a job to less than $1,000. And so I want to pose it to all of you to kind of get your take on this, to see if this is something you've noticed, or if you've done any wedding photography in your past, or what do you think? Is this sort of, is this sort of article true in what we're seeing, or is this just one person's opinion and it may not be indicative of the entire career field? As many of us might dabble in wedding photography. So I think, Aaron, you mentioned you did some wedding photography, right?
No, I said I have done no wedding photography.
No wedding
That's
photography.
actually like the one thing that I have tried to actively avoid over the years, because everyone I know who does wedding photography, it's such a stressful, at least to me, it seems like an extremely stressful gig. So I've tried to, I will be in the street, where there are riots and police and all of that. But the idea of you got one shot at this is someone's giant, big, special day or whatever. And the idea that if you could screw it up, you've now, ruined their life and you've ruined your reputation and all of that just does not appeal to me. So I've tried to actively avoid it, over the years.
Well, let me throw it out to anyone. Has anyone here shot a wedding? Alex and Zach and Ron. All right, well, talk to me about this. Talk to me about this experience you've had. And do you agree with what this author is hypothesizing about the downward turn in the industry?
Welcome to every industry, anywhere. Whether it be Lyft or whether it be cab driving, this article you can replace out with certain words and make it about photojournalism. I honestly, I have always found, because I try to stay away from shooting my friends' weddings. I'll usually just be like, no, I'll bring a camera and I'll take some extra shots and just give them to you as part of your wedding present, just casual stuff. But anytime my friends go, oh yeah, no, we got quoted $8,000 for our wedding photography, and it's like 24 hours, or not even 24 hours. It's like a 12-hour day on one shoot, and then a couple days of editing, and I'm like, what world? Yes, I'm not going to argue if we all can make that world, and maybe there are wedding photographers that use drones and use all the special things, and I can completely see, or having a 3-person shoot, or all the craziness that some people go with weddings. But there's always been wedding photographers out there that'll shoot for next to nothing. And there's always been wedding photographers out there that'll shoot for, only $8,000-$10,000 a day, or whatever the rate is. Out here in upstate New York, if I tried to charge $1,200 for a wedding, I'd be laughed at, because there's a dozen other photographers who shoot for $450. And I don't know. I'm not going to judge, it's still what I make in photojournalism, $450 for a day and a day's work, and then a day of editing, because I don't do, I shoot photojournalistic style. The few weddings I've shot, it's never been, that super crazy editing. But if I was shooting video and shooting drones and stuff like that, yeah, it'd be more. But I don't know. It just seems like yet another. This insert industry is dead, when it actually, no, it's just evolving. And yeah, maybe it's not evolving for the best. Like most, I'm sure there's a lot of cab drivers out there that go, hey, I used to be able to make $100 on that drive to the airport, and now thanks to Lyft and Uber, I can only make 40. And now they say cab driving is dead. And it's not, I don't know, it's not good, but what's Mark Twain's quote?
Buy my book.
Greatly exaggerated. So yeah. Anyway, that's my rant.
Okay. How about you, Ron? You've done some weddings. What's your take?
Yep. As a matter of fact, it was about a month or two ago when I got a call from a girl who I shot her wedding 20 years ago. because her husband's now a sergeant major in the
Wow.
Army. When I shot him, he was like a private or whatever. Now he's a sergeant major. So there's that. That's, something nice. And she wanted updated photographs of them, years later. And I said, well, I live in Hawaii. I can't make it to San Antonio right now. I could recommend somebody. No, weddings I don't have a problem with weddings. I haven't done any in a while. Just because I'm busy with other stuff. It's too much commitment to commit a whole day to one project. It's kind of hard to do.
Right.
Especially 6 months ahead of time. I mean, I could never.
Exactly. That's another one. Yeah. Oh, are you available in May? I don't know, man. That's too hard for me to
I don't
commit.
know what country I'll be living in May.
I got a call one time. It was a Monday, and the girl says, I'm getting married on Friday. Are you able to make it? And I said, oh, good Lord. Saturday. And I said, well, I don't know. I have a wedding in the morning. I had a wedding in the morning. Then I had a convention in the afternoon. And then she wanted like 3:00 in the afternoon, something like that. And I said, well, I don't know. Let me see what I can do. I don't know. Maybe I can get somebody to swap out with me. She said, well, if you can get another shooter, okay, let me see what I can do. So I told her like this. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I know you don't have any money. This is a cheap deal like what Zach was saying. I said, $500. And you get what you get. No complaints. Don't gripe. I'm a busy guy. You get what you get. $500. Okay, great. So I went and I rented some bodies and some lenses from the local camera joint here in Hawaii. And I set these two girls over there. I said, listen, kids, they're competent. They're competent. They're not dummies. I said, here it is, guys. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it or not, but you guys are in charge. Have at it. And I sent them out with the gear, and they shot the wedding. And the girl was upset that it wasn't me. I told her ahead of time. I told her it was short notice. I told her everything, but still, she says, well, I don't want to pay. Now first of all, I paid the girls off for their time. I give them $100 each. I paid the equipment off, $200-300 for equipment. So I'm doing it for free as it is. And she still didn't want to pay. I lost money. Here's what I did. I rented the equipment. The girls showed up for the wedding, and they didn't have memory cards in the cameras. So they came to the convention center. I gave them my credit card. I said, go buy memory cards. They went to the most expensive camera store on the island, and they bought the biggest memory cards. The memory cards were like $200. This was CF cards. I don't know, the Extreme 3, whatever they were back then. They spent a couple $100 on memory cards. So I ended up losing $200, right away on this project. And then the girl still didn't want to pay. She finally did cough up $500, but in the end, I still lost money. Anyway, that's my nightmare.
Sounds like it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds pretty bad. I was looking at the article, and I saw a lot of things that I correlate, just like you were saying, Zach, about how you could replace this with any industry. The author complains about newbies coming in, lowering the overall price, for other people who are established, and whatnot. And I can definitely see a correlation of that, visual journalism, where you have everybody coming in trying to, steal work and whatnot, compete and whatnot. And it's like you're competing not only with people who, buy the cameras, but also people who just use their phones.
Yeah.
But, I think the article ends on sort of a optimistic note, or at least, the sort of realization that, hey, we can all gripe and complain about the fact that, our industry is going downhill, or we can try to adjust to that and see where there is a way for us to make it. I mean, like Aaron, you're obviously, you're probably the most person I can tie to and correlate with, having to adjust to the industry, with, losing the Chicagoist and now trying to make it as a freelancer. How have you sort of adjusted to, to our constantly changing industry?
I mean,
How do you
honestly,
plan to adjust in the future?
I was still freelancing, when I was with Chicagoist. That gig did not pay my bills, so to speak. I mean, it was a regular gig, but it was just one of many. And so, one of the things that I've always had to do for years is find, other clients, other situations, other people who need photography work or video work, or in some cases other types of work. I mean, there have been times where I've taken sabbaticals from doing journalism to do campaign work for folks, just because the offer came to me, and I was like, wow, yeah, I mean, I could do this for 5 months or whatever, and it's gonna, be a decent chunk of change. So yeah, I'll do that. Or local community groups, organizations, things like that. Pretty much, I mean, literally anyone I've ever met, in one way or another, I've been like, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, if you ever need, this, that, or the other, you ever need photos or video work or that kind of thing, I'm here, I'm available. And then just continually broadening, the outlets that I pitch things to, and two, reminding them that, like, hey, I'm, in addition to being a photographer, I'm a writer, or in addition to being a writer, I'm a photographer. I do both. And so it's just that constant kind of like broadening your the spectrum of what you can accomplish for people, just to make ends meet. And then in darker times, I've done all sorts of side jobs. I've worked at bars. I've worked retail. I've done all of that. If I could never, I'm in a place now where I'm kind of, and the one thing again, going back to the wedding thing is like, never shot weddings. I've considered it. I've had a couple like friends ask me to, but in that same kind of like, well, I don't exactly have the gear for it and it's not my style, but I'll consider doing it, for the right price, and you're also friends, so. I can't rely on that.
It is a really fantastic way to lose a friend, though. That's something I can tell you. I've been lucky that I haven't. Through the few times I've shot, I forgot I actually shot a city hall wedding as well for a friend of mine who was getting married to it was a green card wedding. So I documented a crime. But
who hasn't?
Well, I've documented lots of crimes. But yeah. Alex, did you have any experiences or thoughts?
I don't know. Like it doesn't seem. I don't see what this guy's saying around here, anyways. And maybe it's because of the network of photographers that I hang out with in Ottawa, but they're making good money, and it's like. I don't know if the prices are dropping as much. Maybe it's like a geographically based thing. Because around here they're still making a good amount of money, and it seems to be working pretty well. Maybe it's a city thing, where the city market is a bit better than regions. Where in regions you got a whole lot of people who seem to be like the ratio of photographers per capita is a bit higher, outside of the city. But I don't see it here. But in terms of actually shooting weddings per se, I'm with Aaron, and I guess the rest of the people here. I just avoid this stuff as much as I can. I did one on my own like 6 years ago in Cuba, actually, and it's just my friend's brother who asked if I would do it. He's like, "I'm going to pay for your trip, and that's it." I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And he's like, "No expectation, just document whatever," and it was all right. Because there was no expectations said, so I didn't lose friends or anything. But just evolving around these other photographers around town who do weddings for a living, and like I see their work, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna try to compete with what I'm seeing here. So like if people ask me, I just like refer them all the time. I've second shot a couple, but that's it. I'm also trying to stay away from this.
Yeah. I've done a couple myself, not really anything too major, only little bits here and there. I'm kind of on the side of, Zach saying it's like, it's a lot of work, and not only that, but it's like, you cannot mess up, and I hate having that kind of level of pressure, on me in terms of just, it's such a huge monumental thing. And then if like you mess up, well, guess what? They're going to sue you, for messing up their wedding because, you messed it up. So I've not done any major weddings where it's like, I couldn't fix anything. It's mostly just been friends where I just had a camera and I just shot it for the heck of it and gave them the pictures, I just, didn't want to have that kind of pressure. But, we spent a decent amount on our wedding, a couple of years ago. And, I think it's still one of those things that people will invest the money in if they care about it, because it's something like that they want to pay a decent dollar amount for. There isn't really a corollary in photojournalism as much. It's like there's no wedding photography category in photojournalism. It's just like, hey, here's a camera, go shoot it. There's a Pulitzer Prize winner. Pulitzer Prize winners are a dime a dozen, right? So it's like go grab some Pulitzer Prize winner, and he can take some photos for $100. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think the industry is as dire as he depicts it. But then again, I don't live in the industry, so I'm not the best, most qualified to talk about it. But I still think it's, even if you're making the money that he's talking about on the low end, it's still not a bad set of money. It's just a new reality for that particular career field. So
I would also bet. One of the things with all of these different industries that are getting, what's the Silicon Valley word for it? Disrupted.
Right size?
Disrupted. Yeah. I think there's actually another one too, but like all of the ones that are getting disrupted, there's a whole swath of people that now are in the business of buying that. And I would believe that because it was difficult. I haven't been in the market for a wedding photographer since ever, because I've always been really lucky enough to have all of my friends basically are professional photojournalists. So I would just be like, hey guys, just come and I'll give you a free meal and I'll lay out some cameras on the
You're part of the problem, Zach.
Yeah, no, I totally am. But there's never been a day when I would somebody said, well, you can, $2,500 for a wedding. I'd be like, that's how much I'm spending on the wedding. So
are you trying to hint at something, Zach? Come on.
Which is why I'm two-time engaged and never married.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Learned something new.
But what I think is it's like people who would never use a cab as much as they would are now potentially having wedding and like actually getting wedding photographers as opposed to just getting like the JCPenney's level shoot or something like that you might have gotten before, just like two people together. Right. So there are actually more people hiring photographers and people who just simply cannot afford above $1,000 for a wedding photographer. A lot of people are actually making that option as well, where they're getting either Instamatic cameras and they're just putting them on the tables and, doing that. And that's their only documentation of the evening. Also everyone, brother has a cell phone. So if you don't really care about the quality of the images, which that actually is the only thing that kind of worries me about like this sort of thing in general, is that as we slowly dilute what it means to be a good photographer or what is good photography kind of across the board, whether it be photojournalism, whether it be weddings, whether it be nature photography, and we go, ooh, that's a really nice photo. And it was taken with your cell phone and, it's foggy and, there's scratches on the lenses but people think that it's good. That's what worries me, is kind of the dilution of what is good work. Because, on the other hand, wedding photography, as you were saying, Alex, like, is ridiculous. I look at some of the work that people are doing and I'm like, I've been literally in this industry for 12 years. I don't even know how they took that photo, so yeah.
If I were like a young millennial looking to get married in the near distant future, I would probably be like, just let people use their cell phone. Just like create like an online share drive folder that people just log into.
They have wedding apps now.
There's a lot of apps like that now.
Yeah,
exactly.
And like a lot of people I know that have gotten married in the past, say, 10 years, they'll have a photographer and they'll have their professional photos or whatever, but then two, they tell everybody, download the app and that kind of thing. Right. And they kind of go, if they've got the money to spend, they kind of go both routes. And I've seen the thing too where folks, spread out, cameras or whatever, everything from disposable cameras to higher end stuff. Sorry. And say, hey, go nuts, friends or whatever. But I think, it's more about, as Zach, you were saying, the dilution of the idea of what is good, and do people even care? And I think that's something that, the author in this doesn't really hints at, continually, but doesn't really come out right and say is, does the fact that everybody's got a cell phone camera, has that, have we gotten to a point where, cell phone photos are now the standard, not only for weddings, but for photojournalism, for event photography, for all of that? And, is that part of the problem where it's hard to get paid to do this?
Yeah. All I know is that if I ever get married, I'm just going to have CS Muncie do tintype work for me, and that's it. Just exclusively tintype. And we'll have a photo booth, but it'll be tintype.
I wonder if anyone ever chooses not to have a photographer for the wedding, like at all, like no photos,
no documentation,
no documentation.
I don't think so.
I wonder if that's ever happened.
That'd actually be kind of fun. I think it would drive, if I had a wedding, it would drive everyone I know completely nuts. So I actually it would probably clear the room a lot quicker at the end of the night.
Yeah.
If you have an open bar, that sounds like a good idea. If you get a bunch of photographers in the room, and they're like, oh no, you have to leave your cell phone in a bag before you can come in, and no
No
cameras
photos,
allowed.
please.
I did officiate. I officiated a wedding once because I am licensed to do that thanks to the internet. For a friend of mine, who that was the reception. It was fine, but for the ceremony, they didn't force everybody to put their phones in a bag, but multiple times I had to say over and over again, please, hold your cell phones and all that till the end, because they wanted to do like a group selfie or whatever, like after it was done. And surprisingly, most people respected that. Like, everybody just kind of left their phones in their pockets for the most part. I didn't really see anybody. And I mean, it was a short ceremony, so, it was only, I think, 15, 20 minutes tops. So that's not a lot of time to go like, oh, I want to take this picture. Oh, I need to look at Twitter.
You're obviously not a millennial.
No.
That's a lifetime in millennials. All right, well, let's go and move on to our a more visual journalism related topic here. Before we do, I just want to say hello to our live viewers, Jimmy Gates, Sharky James, and Andrew Mead. Alex, do you know Andrew Mead?
Yes, he's the buddy photographer from town here.
Nice. He says he will hire you to do his wedding.
Oh, Andrew, you'll regret this.
And he says he'd also rather chase scanner calls, so there you go. All right, so I saw this question posed on Reddit, on the photojournalism subreddit, and I thought, this might be something interesting to talk about. It's been sort of a slow news week. Is a photojournalist a writer who takes photos or a photographer who writes? And go.
Both.
Okay, Alex, explain yourself.
I mean, I think it can be either or. Like, you come from photography, you're mainly a photographer, you tell your stories visually, and then you kind of add some words in there. Or sometimes you write a full-on story, or a writer writes a full-on story. He's a pretty decent shooter anyways, and just, like, populates it with some photos to complement it. So I think both are equally valid, I think.
Okay.
I agree. When I started doing journalism, I was just a writer. I was not a photographer. And I started shooting because we didn't have a photographer. And so we would always be using, stock photos or stuff from Flickr. And I'm like, well, I'm here where this is happening, so I might as well do both, so that I can at least complement the stories that I'm writing, because they do need a visual component, especially when you're doing, activism and movements and things like that. And so, yeah, I would say both as well.
Okay. Zach? Ron?
Ron, go ahead.
Can't argue with them. They're right. I'm a photographer and I write a little bit, but we've had a girl on the show before that was a good friend of mine from San Antonio, Corpus Christi, and she's more of a writer, but then she got roped into being a photographer too. I think it's just a melding of the industry. It's just why pay two employees when you can pay one to do both jobs?
Okay.
See, you're all wrong. We're all just content creators, and that's all that matters. We just produce content for advertisers to lay their product around, and that's all we are. So no. I mean, I always thought I'd be a writer who took photos, as the added benefit. Most of the sites that I write for don't. I'm literally the first photojournalist who's ever worked for them, and they down to the point where they literally go, so do we have to get rights for all the do we have to get a signature from everybody you take photos of, and how exactly do we pay you? Do we pay you by the hour? Do you which I've always loved. I'm like, no, you totally pay me by the hour. $15 an hour, and it's because it's minimum wage within the progressive world, and it takes me about 40 hours to do an assignment because I take a long time writing and editing photos. No, but seriously, even if you're a straight wire photographer, there is an art to captions, and you can see the really good professional shooters, like the guys who work for AP and things like that. Like they being able to write in three sentences description of the scene and adding a full appropriate context to what the photo was is an art form upon itself, and sometimes just as important as the story that will be attached to it, because a photo taken, we've all taken photos that people go, whoa, what's what's going on in the next frame or whatever, and if you have a good caption, it should tell you everything about what around that image, so that people don't question the authenticity or the whatever of whatever else of that photo. So it's like not taking it out of context or something.
Yeah,
and the speed in which they have to write their caption and file as well. So yeah,
that's why I'm a very bad wire photographer.
So
saying that. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I grew up in the industry. I learned captioning and photojournalism in school, but honestly, I just spent the first 4 years or so of my career, 4 or 5 years, barely even captioning. But again, my job was primarily documentation, mostly photography, a little bit of captioning here and there, but it was never really something that was stressed. And then I went to photojournalism school, where I learned not only how to write decent captions, but also how to write stories, reverse pyramid and all that fun stuff, features. And so then I started to actually learn how to write. But photography was always first for me. And so I always see a photojournalist as someone who tells stories with photos. And writing is really, I should be able to tell a decent story with just photos. Maybe captions at most. But that is, to me, what qualifies as a photojournalist. Writing is secondary, if anything, to being able to tell the story. Nowadays, of course, a photojournalist has to be able to shoot video, record audio, write, and do everything else to tell a compelling story. But if I can't tell a story in 3 to 7 photos, then I'm not a photojournalist. It doesn't matter how well I can write. You can't salvage good, in my opinion. If you can't tell the story with photos first and foremost, it doesn't matter. You're essentially a writer who takes photos to, essentially prop up what you're writing. But you have to be able to tell that story with photos, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But writing has definitely been a component, and I don't think you can survive in this industry unless you can write, at least at minimum a decent 400 to 500 word basic news story to go along with your stuff, just because we all have to be jacks of all trades. Or, record audio, make a video. You have to be able to do more than just supply photos at the end of the day, unless, you're still in one of those areas where you can make a living doing that, which I would say, congratulations, come on the show, tell us how you do it.
Yes.
I will say it is much, as somebody who's juggled both, or, all 5 of these things for a long time, when I do have the chance just to shoot, like if I have somebody else who's writing the story or whatever, or vice versa, if I've had, Tyler, who's been on this show, when, he would shoot things and I would just be there, to write the story. The quality of both things came out much, much better. It was a much, it was a much tighter story. It was a much fuller story because, I wasn't on the ground trying to juggle like, okay, I need, 4 or 5 interviews and quotes. I got to get at least a little bit of that on video. I also need at least, 3, 4 images. Plus I need to contextualize this whole situation, both, in a photo and in, writing. So definitely when you don't have to juggle those things all at once, you get much better journalism in general, be it photojournalism or writing. The problem is, the industry just wants one person who's a jack of all trades rather than, specialists.
Yeah. I will say also, the one thing that I've continually when I was just having this conversation, I think with Mr. Gates, our one continual emailer and commenter. He was at the NRA convention.
Super fan. He's our super fan.
Hopefully have him on. Hopefully have him on in the coming weeks to talk about his experience covering the NRA convention for the first time. But I think it was him I was having a conversation with, which is one of the reasons I don't understand why photojournalists are always the first people laid off, not only because I'm a photojournalist, but because you need photographers, and usually photographers can write. And if they can't write, you should damn well train them to write. And you have literally, if you're going to send one person to a scene, it should be a photojournalist, because you're going to cover you need the photos from the scene, and if they're there already, we have to physically be on the scene in there. So it reminded me of a conversation I was having about that. It was why we questioning why we continually get laid off when we're actually writers usually, and also we take pictures or video for that matter as well. So
all right. Anything else? Anybody else have anything else they'd like to say about the topic?
I could just push back a little bit about that, being that my particular network, we will, as far as having a photographer on the ground and how valuable that is, if we can't do that, we'll buy stuff from the AP, Agence France Presse, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it already, so why do we have to spend money to send somebody over there? The Big Island story right now with the volcanoes erupting, they're not going to send me over to another island to take pictures of lava when they can get it for, they're already paying a subscription fee to the,
right.
Why do that? And in a case where news is breaking and we have to fix it as quickly as possible, it's easier to have somebody else do the work for us.
Yeah.
I mean, as Aaron was saying, actually having someone there's been very few times that I've actually been able to work alongside a reporter. But those few times, like I think my work on like the Al Jazeera story I did a couple of years ago for, which is a huge photo spread, and it's like, I think 14, 15 photos. And I think it was 3,000, 4,000 words that I also researched with my cohort, Greg Palast. My photos, I think, were that in probably some of the best I've ever done, because I was literally working alongside the reporter, and I was able to match his words, what I knew he was going to write, because I know what he was going to write because I was the researcher and producer on the story too. So, we kind of knew where the narrative was going, but I was able to match those photos. So it literally wasn't a lot of times where you see photos, even if usually you see a photo at the top of a news story from the event and then 800 words and that's it. And there's no other photos, but the few times you do see photos, throughout the story, a lot of time they're just, like you said, bought AP photos, bought, whatever. And they just don't help the story other than just literally provide breaks in the word block. Which, that as a person who reads a lot of news, it's helpful on itself, and I'd rather see photos than ads, I guess. But I really think that it's just, as a photojournalist, we definitely need more than that, because it just, even on the basic, news break stories, to be able to have somebody who's actually working with you, and knows what you're going to write and knows your style, and you can match that. That's one of the reasons we have, so many of the best photojournalism stories are kind of in our past, like the stories. And the only new ones that we have are the huge New York Times magazine stories that we have that win Pulitzers and things like that. And we're amazed at how amazing those things are, and how many people read it and consume it. And for some reason, newspapers are shocked that this is a thing. And I go, well, maybe it's because, you don't read a picture book. You don't read a kid's picture book, and they just bought the photos from somebody else who didn't actually read the book along with it. When they illustrated Harry Potter, the guy who illustrated Harry Potter read the book. So it's just
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, we talk a lot about breaking news and things like that, but being able, to kind of, understand photojournalism and understand, writing, I think, is also helpful for long form stories. I just did one last month for Shadowproof alongside a freelancer here named Elizabeth on a group of kids called Good Kids Mad City, who are, they're here in Chicago and they're also in Baltimore, and they are, they're primarily youth of color who are working to end gun violence in their schools and their communities, and they're attached to other groups who are doing the same kind of thing, but they're trying to do it without the police. They're trying to, sort of like build this whole. Anyway, just check out the story. But in putting that story together, we interviewed people and talked to people here in Chicago, but then we were also interviewing folks in Baltimore and things like that. But I was able to draw on several other stories I had worked on over the past month, both for words and content, but also for photos. So there's, in the piece, there's, I think I got about 5-6 photos in there, and they're all from different events that are part of this movement. And I think being able to know, rather than like just, like you were saying, in a lot of cases you get that one photo at the top, and sometimes it's not even related, or it's only kind of related, and it doesn't really complement the story. Whereas, because in writing it and, writing it and then in also shooting these things, I was able to go through my archives and say, like, okay, here are a dozen photos that I think would be perfect to complement this story, that help flesh out the story. Here you go, editors, you pick, however many you want, I'll caption them and that kind of thing. And I think it fleshes out the story, it adds a lot more to it versus just having that one, shot at the top. But again, this was more of a long form piece that, talks about something that's been happening over time rather than, breaking news. So I think, that's another way where, having that combination of knowledge is good for storytelling in general.
There's this other aspect on my side of things. I cover a lot of press conferences and conferences in general and everything, a lot of speaking people. And a lot of the time I'm fighting with other journalists, with their phones and whatever, and Facebook Live, everything. And you get like a huddle of journalists and video guys over the subject, and my job is just to fight to get a hole in there somewhere and get a shot in or whatever. And so half the time I don't listen to what's being said. I don't even hear it. I don't know about you, but like I'm focusing on getting a shot in or getting some like positioning going. So I'll miss half of what's being said. My editor's like, oh, so when they send me alone on a story thing, like, what did they talk about? Like, I try to get you the shots. I don't really know. So I don't know about you, but like, I'd be pretty horrible if I was to like multitask everything that way. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I keep, a lot, if I've got 2 or even 3 bodies on me and I'm able to set up a video camera on a tripod, I'll be able to keep that running and then just focus on shooting photos, or at least I, keep an audio recorder in my pocket and run that the whole time, and then we'll go back and listen to, the press conference, provided that it wasn't, an hour long or whatever. If it's like a show, if you're talking 15 minutes here or there, that's one thing. But yeah, you're right. When it's, if you've got 30 minutes here and then something else is going on, it's hard to do that. Especially because if you're holding, 2 cameras in your hands, it's a lot harder to take notes.
Yeah.
There's that too.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go and move on to our last topic this evening. Of course, Sunday is Mother's Day, just so you know. Don't forget about that, May 13th. Go out and get your flowers or whatever you're going to do now. But, I just want to talk, about mothers a little bit. Obviously, how do I wheel this into visual journalism? Well, I really can't. Unless your mother had something to do with visual journalism. But I don't think that's true. But what I do want to ask you, did your mother have any influence on your job, your career, your life, obviously other than creating you, in terms of either pushing you in a direction perhaps in your career, or were they a photojournalist? I don't know. What was your life growing up with photographs? Did you have parents who were, shutterbugs and shooting every aspect of your life, or did they photograph it, every once in a while? So let's go around the lens here and start with let's start with Ron.
I have a mother.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
My
dad was my influence.
I was not cloned.
Yeah.
You have a belly
Just
button.
2,
That's
baby.
good.
As far as you know.
So your dad was your influence?
My dad was my influence. He had a Polaroid when I was a kid, and you had to put it between two plates of metal and stick it under your arm to make it develop in the cold weather.
Nice.
And that's how I started. So.
We're at cold weather, but we only know you from Hawaii. Where's this cold weather you speak of?
Anywhere else but Hawaii has cold weather. Actually, even Hawaii is too cold for me.
Really?
It gets 50 degrees, and I'm about dead meat. It gets in the low 60s here.
Ooh.
It gets in the low 60s. It
Man.
might dip into the high 50s, but then I'm wearing a parka.
Yeah. Not blame you. Where are you from originally, Ron?
I was born in Sacramento, California.
Okay. So where's the cold weather?
Sacramento, California.
Sacramento, it doesn't get that cold. I was thinking like
It'll get 20s.
I thought you were like in the
20s
frigid
out.
north or something like that.
No. It'll get 20s. It can snow. It's rare, but it can happen.
California cold.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Right. I understand.
Okay. Is it?
Sorry, no, I have nothing to add about my mother. Mother's Day is not. Sorry, no special meaning for me.
I agree with him. I once was in a blizzard in White Sands, so.
Oh, okay. Well, let's throw it over to you, Alex. Did your mom or dad or anyone have any influence on you or your career, or you doing anything for Mother's Day?
So thanks for reminding me that it's next weekend, because that was not going to go well.
This is the public service
and by the
announcement.
way,
now.
your mom is on the other line. Here we go.
Oh my god!
All right, Alex's mom, come on in.
Yeah. Hi, Mom. No. So I don't have any plans. I don't really know what's happening. I need to look at my schedule to have any assignments, anyways. So as far as influence, I don't think per se on that career choice at this point, but like I still have. She gave me her old Minolta from like when I was born, circa 40 years ago, I guess. And so that is a memory. She's used to taking a lot of pictures back in the days, less so after, because like I reached a certain age and that camera disappeared and resurfaced years later. So I'd say maybe a bit, but not that much. It came much later in my life anyways. I'm a latecomer. So.
Yeah. But your mom's still around. She's still rooting you on, right?
Yes, absolutely. She's like my number one fan. She comments in French on all my posts, and like everybody was like, "Is that your mom?"
Nice. All right. How about you, Aaron? Any mom, dad influence?
I mean, they both my parents. Both my parents have been extraordinarily supportive of everything I've done. They struggled for a long time trying to figure out what it is I do, because as somebody who's mostly a freelancer, you don't have an office and you're not going to the same place every day. But I did grow up with, I mean, if you go to their house, literally every single wall in every room is all photos. Like, if it's one thing that my mother loved, is taking pictures or getting photos. Like whenever there's a holiday or whatever, I'll bring a camera or two, and I'll just randomly shoot photos, and then she'll be like, "Oh, I need, I want them all," or whatever. I mean, they have stacks and stacks of photo albums.
Wow.
From before they adopted me to, all the way up to now. And literally, like, I mean, you walk every time I go visit them, there's always like a new photo in a frame on a wall. So I would say growing up with that probably definitely influenced me in some way. I got my first, 35 millimeter film camera when I was in high school, and used that, and I got it from them. So it was like I would say that, just the idea of always having pictures of people or events or whatever was definitely probably influenced me to do what I do now.
Okay. Great. Zach?
My mom, up until I took the Charlottesville photo and was in and covered that and was in People magazine, Not me, but my photos were in
Man of the
people's,
year, right here.
photos of the year sort of thing. I don't think and also now she's on Instagram, so
Wow.
she comments or likes everything. But and she, can't say when I said no, I want to drop out, I want to leave political science at my school and go into the film school, and then leave that and go into photography at Syracuse University. She supported me at least somewhat, financially enough. But photo wise, I think she had all of my photos because obviously, if you're a photographer, usually want the best gift you can give a family member is a photo. Thankfully I have other photos than combat stuff. But all my Alaska work and the nature stuff or whatever. But all of that is I think she has one print that is in the public space, and all the other ones are in the basement, which is, it's a finished basement, mind you, but it's all in there. And I always mock her. I always just really, you have all these photos around here and not in one image by me. But I will say that there was a portrait photographer who was a friend of hers named Fernando, just Fernando, no first name.
Just like Madonna.
And he was of the era of the retouching before digital retouching. So literally, we have photos. There's no pimples. There's no nothing. There's no everything soft features. So it influenced me in that way that I never wanted to become a portrait photographer, and I never wanted to go into literally. I still to this day I'm terrified of Photoshop because I don't ever want to start doing that sort of thing. It was my aunt who was actually a photographer. She's been published in a couple magazines. In fact, I'm published on the cover of a couple magazines thanks to her, because she took a photo of me and they bought that photo.
Wow.
One of them while I was in my mother's womb, actually.
Wow.
But she got me into. I think she gave me my first camera. I probably stole hers. Pentax K1000. Missed that camera. It got stolen out of my car. But also she got me. She gave me civil rights photography books and things like that. So she's the person to blame. That's how I phrase it.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't go.
Oh no, we lost Zach.
Zach's gone.
Well, for me, the photographer in my family, I think, was my dad. He had an actual SLR camera back in the day, but I never got influenced by him at all. I lost him at a young age, and my mom was never really into photography, whatsoever. She didn't even really photograph our family vacations because her sort of philosophy was, the postcards are right there. The postcards, those are pretty nice pictures right there. Just why do you need to take a picture of Grand Canyon? There's a postcard right there. That photographer obviously took the best shot you can get, so just buy the postcard if you want to. Well, photograph. So she had zero influence on my becoming a photographer. In fact, really nothing in my life kind of pushed me towards going to photography. I only ever used point and shoot cameras growing up. My experience with film was loading it into a point and shoot camera. I remember back when I was in elementary school, we went on a field trip, and I had so little knowledge of what film and camera and how cameras worked. That I remember opening up the back of the camera and looking at the film and being like, I don't understand. Mom, what is this? And she's like, oh my God, what are you doing? And close it.
You were chimping back then? Yeah. You were looking at the back
I was looking at the film.
There should be a digital image.
Right.
So actually you invented the digital camera in your head when you were a little kid.
That's it. That's the truth. But again, I had no idea how film and cameras even worked when I was a little kid, so it was all.
I still don't know.
There you go. Yeah, it's a mystery. It's magic. No real influence, and really, again, I said this before. The Marine Corps is the only reason I ever became a photographer, because they said, "Hey, you're going to be a photographer in the Marine Corps." I'm like, "Okay, sure, whatever, I guess." If that's what you want me to do.
You can't swim. Here's a camera.
That's right. So yeah, I picked up my love and interest for it, but since then, my mom, she loves my work. She loves the photos I take. She constantly compliments, what I post on Facebook. Gives me likes and thumbs up. She loves seeing photographs of the kids. And then, of course, every time I'm with her or on vacation, I'm the shutterbug of the family. So, I'm shooting photographs of my brother and his family and my mom. Although I do have to say my brother has gotten quite into photography. I told you earlier that my dad had an SLR. Well, my brother took it. So that's why I never got it, because he was older than me. So, of course, he took the SLR. And I think he still has that. And he shot some film back in the day when film was still a thing. But, he actually shoots. He's got, decent camera gear, and he's not a bad photographer himself. So, I think maybe it's in the family. Thanks, Dad, for that. My dad had tons of slides, by the way. He was always shooting on slide film and everything like that. And I scanned like 1,000 slides like 20 years ago on an old scanner, and have those still. So, thanks, Dad, for capturing the memories, because my mom sure wasn't going to do it.
So
I'm not
this
really.
Episode, the ending of this kind of is a
thanks for nothing, Mom. Well, thanks, Mom, for putting
none
me
of us here. If we were orphans, all of us would probably still have the same line of work.
Pretty much. And then we'd have a backstory that we could talk about, growing up
There
in
you
the
go.
hardship.
Well, actually, no, I would be Batman.
I'm Batman.
Shouldn't have said that.
You just gave it away.
Where would you have gotten the money for that, though? I mean, that
You know why I'm so broke?
is being rich.
If I were Batman, I would grow a beard, because if you're doing anything in the daylight, you're gonna get it's gonna be all not tanned here. Has Batman ever had a beard? Just for the comic book geek, Zach. Has Batman ever had a beard in the comics?
Superman has as well.
Okay. All right.
Captain America has one.
He does.
Yep.
He does. How about that Infinity War, huh? Anyways.
I haven't seen it. I don't want to hear anything about it.
Well,
I can't believe they killed Captain America.
Oh,
Oh God, no!
Everyone lives. That's my spoiler. No.
Everyone is.
the spoiler is there's going to be a sequel next year.
There you go.
Oh, and by the way, also there's already planned sequels for several of the people in the film. So
Shh. That's enough. That's enough of you. All right, let's close up the show. Let's go around. And Aaron, is there anything you'd like to plug or push or promote?
Come back to me. Let me think about that.
Alex.
Yeah, no, same as usual. National Observer, you're doing great independent work. And I guess since Andrew's watching, go check his stuff out. He's working for the Hill Times in Ottawa. So
Nice.
Sorry.
Zach or Ron, you got anything you want to push or promote?
I'll have a piece up on the about the NRA convention. Probably Wednesday up on nationofchange.org.
Okay, great. Ron?
Standard stuff. You can check out my Instagram if you want to see any photos I've taken lately. It's Instagram.com/RonPhotoHawaii. Or if you want to watch the news stories that I sometimes contribute, Net25 in the Philippines, or Eagle Broadcasting Corporation on the internet.
Let me ask you, Ron, do you plan on going to the Big Island to document any of the lava
No,
stuff?
sir. No, sir. We have people on the island with cell phones. They're doing just fine.
Okay, great.
They don't need me.
Citizen journalist.
I saw your
good work.
post as I shamed you. He posted
Yeah.
the other day. He had his rig out and whatever, and then he's like, I should have just brought my cell phone.
I just brought my
Posted
cell
on
phone.
Shame.
All right, Aaron, back to you. Anything?
Yeah, you know what? I will say if you go, I've got a couple stories up on shadowproof.com, so check that out. And then to find me, my Twitter is Aaron Cynic, and my Instagram is also Aaron Cynic, and my website is aaroncynic.net.
Nice. Well, of course, I want to highlight everybody. Go to aroundthelens.com. We are always posting stuff over there. I just posted a story about Matthew Aaron Callahan, guest of the show a few weeks ago. He won either MilFog or MilVid or one or both. I can't figure it out. There's a little bit going on. We don't know quite the end result, but earlier this week he had posted they had won both MilFog and MilVid. And if you know anything about the Defense Information School or the military, those competitions, they are very difficult to win. And to win both has never happened in the history of the competition, as far as I could tell. So when he announced that on Facebook, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is monumental." So I wrote a story about it, and then I found out in another post that there may have been an issue there. So he may not take the Mill Fog competition win. I think he still got the Mill vid. We'll find out though. I'll post an update when I know for sure.
And that, by the way, stands for Moms I'd Like to Photograph.
There you go.
Videotape.
Yeah, there you go.
Military
Photographer of the Year.
Just to tie into
Military
the
videographer.
theme of our episode.
There you go. Yep, Mill Fog. Oh my gosh! All right. Well, we've devolved into a horrible pseudo show now. So I think I should probably close it up before we get too far along this line of thinking. Anyways, if you'd like to ask us or our panel any questions, I will gladly read them on the show if they're relevant. Send those questions to info@aroundthelens.com, or you can always jump in the live stream here and talk like all of our folks have. Thanks, Dane Owada, for joining us as well. You came on the show a little bit later, so appreciate that. And thanks again to all the people who watch the show live or, listen to the show afterwards. Really appreciate it. And thanks again for our guests, Aaron and Alex. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And for Ron Hamilton and Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 123, and we are out.